Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Tom LaHue, and we're going to be talking about type 1s and criticism. Ow! Okay, so before we get started, in the description below is a link to my website, tomlahue.com, and there's links there on my webpage for all my social media junk. And thanks to my patrons, I really appreciate your support. Also, if you're interested in Enneagram coaching appointments or relationship coaching or whatever I can do, all that's on my website, as well as several different certificate programs I have in Enneagram coaching. So let's jump into this topic of type 1s and criticism. And now, let me just start by saying, ones, I appreciate you guys. I admire you. I do have a line to one, and I know I need that voice in my head. I should be more critical of myself as a type 7. I should wake up and think the type 1 stuff, like what needs to be done today, and am I really focused on what matters most, and I need to comply more my energy with the world around me rather than going after what I want. I need to hear that one voice myself. It may surprise you that other people don't have that strong inner critic inside their own head. You obviously see that other people just seem like they're doing whatever comes to their mind without regard as to whether it's appropriate, and saying things that aren't appropriate and doing things that are wasting time and wasting energy. And I'm sure that's very confusing. I always say that ones, they tend to have this like Rottweiler that lives on the inside, kind of facing them and barking at them and growling at them. Eights kind of have that same, but it's focused outward. If you're not sure if you're an 8 or a 1, that might be a good way to sort of simply think about it. Does the dog barking at everybody else, or is the dog primarily barking at me? As a child, you grow up with this message that I need to police myself. I need to do the right thing because I don't want to be criticized. I don't want to be, I don't want to feel like a bad person. And which is great. I mean, it's great. And we all need that, in small doses. We need to, limit ourselves and restrict ourselves and be the best version of ourselves. But let's just take a second and talk about criticism. I love you guys, but I kind of feel sorry because you still believe that perfection is possible. We don't live in the Garden of Eden, and we live in a broken world, and that's really, when you get to the heart of it, I mean, that's what frustrates you, is everything doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and people don't work the way they're supposed to, and relationships don't work the way they're supposed to. And so when things don't work the way they're supposed to, you tend to get frustrated, you tend to get irritated. And as a type 1, there may be a part of you that's clinging onto this concept that if I work hard enough, if I apply myself enough, if I focus my energy and my attention and my effort, then maybe I can reach this perfect standard. And I just want to remind you that perfection is not possible in this life. And in fact, what if we could flip that and reframe it a little bit? Like, what if I could learn to accept imperfect? Like, what if I was more okay with things not being exactly as they ought to be? Like, that maybe that is the way they are, and being perfect would be learning to accept that. Ugh, I know that's difficult. Well, I want to just read a couple of statements and about criticizing yourself. This is from Beatrice Chestnut's new book on the Enneagram Guide to Waking Up. And this is what she says. If you have an inner critic, I got my nerd glasses on, I got my highlighter, and I'm ready for action. Okay, so if you have an inner critic, and realize, I mean, we all have this, it's just not as dominant a voice in my head as it probably is in yours. Okay, that inner governor, that inner restrictor, that says, that looks like it's going to be too much fun. That looks like it's going to be, offensive to somebody. I might just hear that and then go ahead and proceed anyway. So I have an awareness of that inner critic, but it's probably not the most defining voice in my head. Okay, so if you have an inner critic and an internal voice that continually monitors your words, your actions, your behaviors, and you tend to be very judgmental of yourself. I know you don't want to be judgmental of yourself or others, and you don't want to come across as judgmental, but I mean, that's kind of what it means to be a type 1, is you have an awareness of the way things ought to be, and your eye goes naturally to the way things don't measure up to that. And that's got to be exhausting. I mean, it's got to be exhausting for you, and it's got to be exhausting for the people around you. If it's hard for you to be pleased, if it's hard for you to be happy, let me just say it this way. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if maybe you could be a little more gentle on yourself and gentle on your environment? Wouldn't that be a perfect goal to aspire to? Or, in the words of one of my favorite authors, Richard Carlson, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, who I think is very much a type 9. It's so much fun to be around someone who isn't bothered by something all of the time. Think about that. It's so much fun to be around someone who isn't bothered by something all the time. When your eye naturally goes to what's not correct, you're going to be bothered. And I know that maybe even that you suppress that and push it down and shove it down and try not to be bothered. Look, you bring something wonderful into the world. You bring this desire to make things better and this desire to improve things. And I want you to keep doing that. I really do. I mean, we all need that. We need that presence at work. We need that presence in our communities, in our neighborhoods. We need that person that believes in a standard, that holds that standard. It's just, can you do it without being so harsh on yourself? Can you do it without being so critical? And look, I know even having this conversation is difficult because you could feel judgmental about yourself being so judgmental. In other words, it's such a loop, you start criticizing yourself for being too critical. I don't want you to do that. I want you to observe your natural tendency to notice what's wrong, to observe that, and then to have some compassion on yourself and say, oh my, there I go again. I'm a type 1 and I'm being very 1-like. And just don't forget that you have a line to 7. Okay, remember that. You have a line to 7, which is basically a line, that is saying at your best, you tend to ask the question, what do I need to do to be happy today? And that doesn't feel like a legitimate question for you as a type 1. What needs to be done today? That feels like the right way to respond to the world. What needs to be done? What do I need to be doing? And I appreciate that so much. Just every once in a while, maybe wake up with the first thought, like, what would I do today if my goal was to be happy? If my goal was just to have joy, if my goal was just to have peace and joy and happiness, what would I do? How would I reschedule my day? And then think you also have a line to 4, which is what would I do that feels meaningful to me? That I just feel like, embodies my best nature. Like maybe it's woodworking, and you're not repairing something, you're just enjoying yourself building something, arts, crafts, watercolor painting, hiking. It's not being productive. It's just something that's meaningful to you. Think about those 2 lines. What would I do today if I wanted to be happy? What would I do today that feels meaningful to me? And try to let those voices be as loud as the voice that says, here's what you have to do. Here's what's urgent. Here's what's most important. Here's what others are expecting. Gentle on yourself. Just a little more gentleness with yourself. A little kindness. And really, if you think about it, you have a 9 on one side, which is saying be gentle, and you have a 2 on the other side saying be kind. Think about those voices today. Like, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. You have a tendency to judge things as good or bad. A lot of things are good or bad. I have a Christian worldview, and I believe that God says this is good and this is bad. This is good, this is evil. I get it, okay? But there's most things in life don't really fall into the category of good or bad. Most things in life fall into the category of I like this better. I prefer this better. And if it's just a preference that you prefer one over the other, then be careful about framing that issue as though it's right or wrong. That could be hard for people, around you, that if they do something they prefer, to hear that it's wrong. It may not be wrong. I mean, is it objectively wrong? Does it go against some moral law or some standard or against their religious beliefs and convictions? Or is it just not something you prefer? If you could think about it in terms like there's good and bad or right and wrong, and then there's another category of preferences, and those are not the same thing as good or bad. If you prefer the dishwasher loaded a certain way, then recognize that the other way is not bad. It's not evil. It's just not the way you prefer it. And so it might be helpful to soften the approach on yourself and on others by using the word, well, I prefer it like this. I prefer it. I prefer it. I went to college. I prefer it this way. And is the person sinning against you? Are they sinning against God, or are they just doing something that you don't prefer? That softens your approach a little bit on yourself and on others as well. Okay. You may not be unaware. You may be unaware of the consequences of all of this self-monitoring. What's it like to live under the principal's eyes all the time? What's it like to live under the principal's eyes? I'm not trying to make fun of you. People say in my comments, Tom, you're making fun of us. It feels terrible. I'm not making fun of, well, maybe I am a little bit. But remember, I'm a 7. I see things in a 7 way, and I'm stuck in my own mess, right? None of us are not stuck in a mess. I'm stuck in my own mess. And, I'm trying to have compassion on you, and I hope you're having compassion on me. But it's got to be difficult living under that, principal's gaze, that daddy's stare, looking down on you. It's just got to be difficult, and I want to have all the compassion in the world for you. What's it like to live under all of that harsh, critical monitoring? And realize, at the end of the day, you're doing this to yourself. It's not required. You don't have to. At any point, you could recognize what you're doing and then kind of loosen up a little bit on yourself. The whole point of all of this personality study is to let the personality relax a little bit. It's that we might start to get down deeper into our core and realize, wow, I am so compelled and impulsed. I know you think 7s are impulsed. Oh, the kid that can't sit still, he's just so impulsive. Okay, but notice your own impulses. We all have these impulses and compulsions that we feel like are working for us, but let's open our minds a little bit and say maybe these impulses might be making my life not work out the way I want it to. Think about your goals. What are your goals in life? And then look at how your impulses at times move you away from those goals. You'll be surprised. All right, so at any point you could relax this on yourself and say, rather than, oh my goodness, I need to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing that thing again where I get really harsh with myself, and I need to just relax that voice, and I want to just try to let that be a something that voice I observe, and then I just kind of let it pass by and return back to being present to life. Not present to what it should be or what went wrong or something should have been done about this a long time ago. Not present to that, but present to the way things actually are. Look, you have this wonderful life and you are on earth to make it better, to make it gooder, to make it more fantastic. But you got to ease up on yourself and relax a little bit and relax on others. They're trying to love you. We're all trying to love you and you're trying to love them. I know. Okay. So you likely ignore the physical, emotional, and mental tension. 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 Come into that 9 space a little bit more. Think of having yoga out on a cliff, looking out over the horizon and just being at peace with yourself, being at peace with your environment, being at peace with the world around you, being at peace with your flaws and imperfections, saying, sometimes I mess up. You know what's going to draw people to you? It's not that you get everything right. It's that you own the fact that you don't and that you're okay with it. And you say, I have these really high standards, but man, I screw up. I screw up sometimes and I do the wrong thing and I blow it big time. And here are these very relationships I'm trying to heal and manage. Sometimes I do the stupid stuff I don't want to do. And I hope you guys will love me anyway. And I hope you guys will forgive me. And I know you guys accept me as I am. And that's what pulls people to you. It's not how perfect you are. It's that you freely admit your failures and flaws and imperfections. And a little bit, I know this is hard, okay? Let me end with this. A little bit of being able to just laugh at yourself. Just be able to laugh at yourself. To not take yourself so seriously. You know how I know you're stuck in your personality when I coach people is you're very offendable. The more offendable you are, the more you're stuck in your self-protective patterns. The more you can laugh at yourself and say, look at this game I'm playing. Look at this nonsense I'm doing. The less offendable you are, the more I know that you are starting to expand out of your little closet that you're stuck in, your type 1 closet, your type 2 closet, you're starting to expand out into the rest of the house. Not defending yourself so much, but embracing yourself and accepting yourself and knowing that even though I'm a flawed person, I'm a loved person. And even though I don't get it perfect, I don't get expelled every time I get a B in my class. Somebody's at my door. All right, so enforce, okay, good behavior, okay, stress. The last word on this page about that is stress. I'm sure stress is one of those things that shows up in your life. And, stress means something, there's tension. There's tension. And if you really think about for type 1, what causes the tension, you could say on this end, it's because things aren't the way they're supposed to be. But notice, what is the other end? Okay, like my guitars, right? Okay, so there's tension on those strings because it's tight at the bottom and it's tight at the top. The tuning keys tighten it, and then it goes into the guitar down at the bottom. So you could focus on one end, why there's tension in your life, because things don't measure up, things don't behave right. I messed up. People don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't stop at stop signs. They don't respond back when you text them. They don't wave when they merge into traffic. Notice that's one end of the guitar is that causes the tension, is things in this world are not, they're broken. Okay. What's the other end that causes tension? The other end is your assumptions, beliefs, and expectations that things should be perfect. And so it's both of these together that create this tension. Well, guess what? This is not going to change. Once you realize that this end of the guitar, it's not going to change. Everything's going to be broken. We live in a fallen world. We're fallen people. We have broken personalities, right? And so this end is always going to be constant, that stuff is not going to work properly. There's always going to be weeds and thorns in the garden. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be failures and difficulties. So look, you can do something about this other end, about relaxing those expectations, relaxing those assumptions and those beliefs that perfect is possible in this life. How about instead of perfect, just improvement? Doesn't that sound so much nicer? Not perfection, just improvement. And that's something I think everybody in your life could get on board. How could we make things better? All right, guys, take care. Love y'all. And as always, be present to life.